series of roundtables. At this point and juncture of the pandemic situation, I first just want to mention to everyone, hope everyone is safe, taking care of your health. Please take care of your health and be safe. Wishing everyone a more safe uh, right now. So today's roundtable is specifically on the next new series of roundtables which we are starting with. Just to give a reflection of the previous roundtables, we had some fantastic sessions on AI in CPG and retail, banking and insurance, manufacturing, healthcare, where we focused on exploring the capabilities, the applications, the use cases of AI adoption in multiple industries. And we also talked about the AI journey roadmap for accomplishing transformation and innovation there. The roundtables discussed also looked into giving a flavor of the upcoming AI analytic opportunities and what does it really mean from a business domain technology perspective. Today's roundtable, we wanted to focus on what is actually happening in the AI technology and solutioning space in terms of giving a flavor of the several intelligent products and services which are coming up in the market, and what does it really mean from a whether we talk about a socio-economic impact, whether we talk about a commercial availability, whether we talk about the presence of emergence of AI, where what's the hype, what's the reality, and so on and so forth. And in order to facilitate today's discussion, we have extreme senior panel members, which is felicitated by Sundar Ramalingam. So Sundar Ramalingam is the global director of AI consulting at NVIDIA and is responsible for managing the deep learning practice there. He also looks into whether we talk about the multiple players in artificial intelligence, IoT, big data, and looks into specifically the emerging technologies, what is actually happening from a deep learning perspective in NVIDIA. Apart from that, he also looks into working closely with technology startups, venture capitalists, in terms of what is actually happening in this space. So without further ado, I'll hand over the mic to you, Sundar, for this session, and really looking forward for your thoughts as well as the thoughts of the panel here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kapil. Thank you. And once again, here is a warm welcome to this roundtable. A very interesting topic, and in fact, nothing new. I mean, this is a topic which has been in many avatars, been discussed many times in multiple panels. But the moment I heard about the topic, the recent advancements in the area of AI and technology, one thing that always strikes me is that every time when I'm taking part in a panel like this, most of the times as a panelist and few times as an anchor also, I learn something new. Every time it changes. The panelists change, the ideas change, the newer technology that got introduced when that panel is happening is very different from what had happened a few months ago. So the technology is increasing, it is enhancing itself at a breakneck speed. And most of us, I'm sure, the audience, and of course the panelists, we are in this exciting world of AI. We are blessed to be witnessing one of the best happenings in the technology world in this century. I mean, we are blessed to be in this area at this point in time. But then, it's not that we know everything about it. There is so much for us to learn here. And along with all the attendees, I really look forward to learning from the elite panel who has joined us today. And a heartfelt thanks to 3AI for arranging this exciting panel and for inviting us over. It's my pleasure, and more importantly, it's my privilege to be anchoring this, and I really look forward to learning from all the other panelists here. So, I mean, all the four panelists here, they are I mean, one thing which again struck me is when I went through the profiles, the names, a few of them I knew before itself, is they are from varied industries, varied domains, and stalwarts in their own areas. And I'm really, really happy to welcome all of them to this panel. In no particular order, we have Tathagat Verma, who is a senior director of one of the most technologically advanced companies in the world, namely Walmart, when it comes to adoption of AI. Um, they have a huge development center here in India, like many other international companies. It's called the Walmart Labs, and he's a senior director there, and he runs the machine learning practice there. Very happy to have you here, Tathagat. We all call him TV, so I think I'll continue to call you TV.
Sure, Sundar. No, thanks, and happy to be here. Just a minor correction. I had the strategy and operations.
Okay.
Not really. I think there was a small typo. I just
Sure.
wanted to make sure that because we are also recording it, we just have the right things there. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, very happy to have a strategist here amongst us. Thank you. Welcome. And then we have Smita Suryanarayanan, who is I would say, very interesting company. I mean, to be honest, I learned about this company after I got introduced to Smita. I went through and learned a lot about it. I'm sure Smita will have a lot of interesting things to share about what she does and what her company does. She's from Investment Godly. Welcome, Smita. Very happy to have you on the panel. And then we have Soumendra, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Tredence Inc. Once again, a very established company, having its name written all over the globe, very well recognized. And last but not the least, welcome Soumendra to the panel. And last but not the least, very happy to have Vineet with us. Vineet is the co-founder of Afin, and they are doing some extraordinarily good work when it comes to the analytics part of it, serving multiple clients all over the globe. Vineet, happy to have you here. Welcome. With that very small introduction, a brief introduction, I'm going to ask each one of you to talk about yourselves in more detail, and very importantly, what exactly does your company do here in India? And I know all of you are a global company, so what do you guys do for the globe? Possibly each one of you can take about a couple of minutes and run through this. 2-3 minutes should be good enough for each one of you. So why don't we get started?
Okay, let me go first. Thanks, Sundar, for this opportunity and 3AI. Like you said, every time I get into such kind of panels and conversations, I learn more. And that is the keenness for me to jump into any such opportunities. And of course, we are all good friends and colleagues. This pandemic situations, this is one of the forum where we get to see each other and talk to each other and the audience. Tridence Analytics is a company which is primarily focused on last mile adoption problem solving. In analytics and in AI, one part of it is to solve a business problem, develop and hand it over, but making it actionable, making these insights to be embedded into business processes and systems where the decision matters, and for the persona who is going to use it. That is what we focus on largely. My role is, of course, being in India, I'm responsible for our India delivery, which is the largest and the biggest for Tridence. I'm also responsible for the innovation that we do within Tridence, be it solutions, accelerators, AI, algorithms, and patents, and all that, including products that we take it to market. I'm also responsible for strategy, for growth of Tridence and for clients at that capacity. Once again, happy to be here and happy to engage.
Thank you, so. TV, as a strategist of, I would say, one of the most technologically advanced companies in the globe, what exactly do you do there? I mean, what's your role, and what does Labs do in India specifically?
Yeah. Sure, Sundar. No, thanks. Thanks 3AI for the opportunity, and happy to be here. As you all know, Walmart is the largest retailer in the world. In fact, it is the Fortune 1 company, so the largest company in the world. We've been around for 60 years, and one of the things about Walmart has been that we have always been taken a very pioneering position in the adoption of technology when it comes to retail. Not many people know, for example, the barcodes was essentially like for the first time it was taken up adoption in Walmart. So we have been basically trailblazing ever since, and we also are in some sense, I would say, in some kind of a tough business, because when you are buying a toothpaste, you can buy the toothpaste from anywhere. Why should you come to Walmart for doing it, right? So because we don't produce the toothpaste, for example, or we don't produce the flat television that you are buying. We are, of course, selling it. So how do we really make sure? So what is really important for us are two or three drivers. One is obviously the trust the customers place in us in terms of, hey, are we really getting the right items? Are we getting the right price? As you all know, that Walmart has a philosophy of ELDP, everyday low prices. So we basically don't have any kind of a thing that's saying, oh, we'll have different pricing on a Wednesday, different pricing on a Thursday, different pricing for Sundar, different pricing for Som. We have everyone is guaranteed the everyday low prices, and that's been the hallmark of our pricing strategy for last 60 years, and we still continue to drive that. So that's really on the consumer-facing side of the business. On the back-end side of it, to make sure that ELDP or the everyday low prices are assured, we also undertake what we call as ELDC, which is the everyday low cost. Because if we don't really manage the cost of our operations, then we are not going to be able to pass down the benefits to the customers. So if you look at our annual report, you will find that even though we did $560 billion of revenue last year, we operate in the profit margins of 2 to 3%. Now, it is by design that we essentially do that, because the philosophy of Mr. Sam Walton was to really make life easier for people, and his philosophy was helps people save money so that they can live better. So all our technology is essentially geared up towards really getting the best pricing, the best possible products, the best possible shopping experience to the consumers. And we are basically, I mean, that's really our mission there. We have been here for about 12, 13 years in India. We are based out of Bangalore, Chennai, and Gurgaon. And we essentially work on the global tech. In fact, we rebranded labs to global tech last year. And we work on, from here, basically a lot of products that we develop, a lot of technology that we develop that powers both consumer-facing part of the business and also on the merchant side of the business or internal processes. So we basically undertake a slew of products essentially around it. Data and AI continues to play a big role in that. As you can imagine, that there is a lot of information that we are dealing with, both in the store and on the e-commerce side of it. And that's where it really becomes interesting in terms of how we make sure that we use the data to provide the best shopping experiences and really fulfill the mission of help people save money so that they can live better. Over a period of time, I personally see that 60 years back, money was more important than time. Today, time is more important than money in some sense, because people want to save time. So we also look at time. And in the last 1 year of COVID, we have seen that there has been a huge uptick in the online and the omni-channel. And I think it suffices to say that we are looking at both money and time, and we are looking at technology to really help us in that sense. My role here is I head the strategy and operations. I report into Hari, who is the country head. So I basically run all the horizontal in terms of technology, strategy, and business operations. We are kind of tidal wave that lifts all the boat together, sort of thing. And happy to talk more about it in the coming time.
Nice. Thank you. Vineet, so what does Afin mean? I mean, how did you arrive at that name when you founded the company, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so affine essentially is a mathematical term. So it's essentially a mathematical transformation where you essentially take a shape, and if we were to apply an affine transformation, which essentially is a type of mathematical transformation, and if you apply this to a particular shape, the size of the shapes becomes bigger, but the very integrity of the shape remains the same. So for instance, if I were to apply an affine transformation on a square, it becomes a bigger square. So that's the kind of philosophy that we also wanted to apply to our business and to our clients, that, hey, we are here to, transform you in a very positive way, and we respect your business, which represents the shape. And we are here to transform your KPIs, whether it's revenues, whether it's gross margins or any other KPI, right? So it's making you bigger and favorable in a way. So that is what Find represents. And I'm one of the co-founders at Find, and I'm responsible for driving innovation at Find. I think as all of you appreciate that the AI and technology stack is changing pretty much on a daily basis, right? And I think innovation is very, very critical to stay on top of this ever-changing AI and technology landscape. So I'm responsible for driving innovation across multiple functions at Find, from the delivery to COEs to even selling functions, right? So that's what I do mainly. I also spend a lot of time with our clients and discussing their problem statements, conducting workshops, ideation, and then of course using AI and technology to solving their business problems. So that's what I do mainly. And Affine is a 10-year-old pure-play AI services company, as most of you know, and we use AI, technology, data engineering, and more importantly, domain and general problem-solving skills to design end-to-end business problems, business solutions for our clients. And very excited to be part of this forum today and looking forward to the discussion today.
Sure. Thank you. Smita, you deal with other people's money, don't you?
Yes, we look at other people's money. We don't manage it, but yes.
Okay. So tell us what Yodlee does.
Sure. So because I think Vineet started with the origin of their company's name, I'll start with ours. Urban legend, at least within the corporate world of Yodlee, is that the 5 Indian origin founders liked the Kishore Kumar song. Yodlee actually came from that. It's actually one of the world's oldest fintechs because we're 20 years old and still around. Part of a larger company which bought us out, which is InvestNet. The core theme is financial wellness. We enable people's financial wellness. And specifically Yodlee, the entity Yodlee that I work with is also what we call the data and analytics business of InvestNet. So effectively, the charter of that this organization is to acquire, enrich, and make sense of financial data and give it back via the financial institution to the end customer. So the platform that we have helps banks, therefore banks and financial institutions and other fintechs help end users with a 360 view of their finances. So it started off before, most of the big data technologies were a thing in early 2000s as a data aggregation and a scraping business. With evolution of the banking side of the world and open banking coming in, a lot of, the whole world on the banking ecosystem has changed, and we've kept pace, and we've moved from a acquiring and acquisition business to a analysis, insights, and enrichment business. So effectively, we've retained what we were, but we've added a lot of layers. And for us, therefore, AI is a core part of what we do. On an average, we ingest 40 million transactions at least every day using our big data platform, and we enrich it in split seconds and returning back to the banks. We work with 15 out of the 20 largest banks in the US, but we also have presence in Canada, UK, Australia, India, South Africa. So the India Center is actually more than 80% of the Yodlee side of the business. And we have most of our engineering capabilities for the platform side, for the product side, as well as data science. In fact, the data science team is about 100 and 150 people strong, and one person sits in the US, 149 of us sit here. So it's pretty much based out of here. We're trying to change the mix a little bit now, but it's worked very well for us. And my role effectively is, as part of the data science organization, I lead what we call the insights and the solution validation team. So my team gates all products in and out. So we work with products, engineering, the requirement gathering side of things to actually make sense of what customer needs to be addressed using an analytics solution. We also gate once the analytics solution is developed. How does it work? We test, validate, and then release it into production. So effectively, my team that's why we call it the insights team as well as the solution validation team, because we are our own customers at the end of the day. Before a customer sees stuff, we see stuff. So I think one of the best things that we've had during the COVID era is on our website, we power a section of insights called COVID-19 Insights. The data that we have access to and data rights to use enables us to take a very quick view of the macroeconomic scenario that is evolving in the US on a real-time basis. So since we get customer spending data, customer income data, as well, and we have algorithms to completely de-identify that data, we are actually able to push out every week insights on actually how the US is recovering. So that's something that we used a lot of our baseline AI work to. We took that next step to saying, okay, we have a lot of data, we've enriched it using very sophisticated algorithms. Now let's make sense out of that and push it out to the real world where people can actually use that information and insights.
Makes sense.
That's something that we've been working on, and that's been very exciting as well to see all of the work that we've been doing in the AI field now, easily digestible by people across the world.
Sure, sure.
Fantastic methods.
Thank you. All right. So let's discuss a little bit of basic stuff. Okay, let's take a step back and look at the basics. Say the term data analytics is the most used, or I would say the most misused term today in the world, technology world today. I mean, starting from creating pivot tables to look at my Excel sheet, large Excel sheet, to the latest advancements in deep learning and machine learning techniques, anything and everything is clustered under the umbrella term called as data analytics. So purely from a data analytics point of view, so what are the technological changes that you are witnessing? I mean, obviously, people want more, people want better speed, people want a better accuracy, and people want it at the lowest price possible. So how is the technology changed over the recent past to enable this, to take data analytics to the next level and make it the most coveted technology in the world today?
Very interesting question, and you started with a boiling the ocean kind of a context around it, and you rightly said everybody talks about it, everybody has got a different interpretation and a perception around it. But what I see, in a global market view, clients and practitioners, as they deal with all of these, 4 or 5 high-level pointers, if I may. The first one is ability to abstract and ability to make the meaning of the data in a very less cumbersome way. Now, and it's a very broad pointer, and Smita was also talking about this similar thing earlier. If you think about the earlier journey, the whole thing about data preparation, volume of data, variety, velocity, and the veracity of data, everything was compounding into what does this data mean and how do I organize it so that I can prepare it for further downstream analysis and usage and all that. Technology in that context today with AutoML, a lot of data wrangling capabilities, which is very powerful, very emerging in that context, ability to look at data and profile it real time almost for the entire volume of data that you are dealing with. None of these things were there earlier. So that is basically contextualizing the data, humanizing that part of the data faster, better, and cheaper. The second pointer is not every data is same. The different data means different things. How do you organize all of that? How do you start applying certain kinds of algorithms, and not just one algorithm, but maybe multiple algorithms competing, and defining the different facets of that data for consumption. That's the second part of it where technology has evolved a lot. Of course, there is a bit of a challenge in that second thing, which is deep learnings and other kinds of very complex, sophisticated algorithms have kind of made way to give the answer. But again, why it did what it did, nobody is able to pinpoint. So that's the third pointer around explainability, around drift within that, context drift, algorithms, performance degradation itself. A lot of that in the previous world, which is almost a decade or so back if we go, was again putting some really sharp brains and then asking them to open the hood and then go and do something and come back, tell me what is going on in this data and this algorithm. But today, with sophisticated algorithms and ability to pinpoint and look into what is happening inside, that is the other technology advances, I think, is helping us to do certain aspects of usage. The fourth pointer, which compared to all other technological advances, is humanizing AI. I think, and I'm a big proponent of this, because design thinking into AI and persona-based applications, AI applications, all of that is a very recent activity. Prior to probably a couple of years back, it was always about, give me data, what is the problem statement, and I will put together algorithms and somehow I'll come out with certain pilot-based answers and then you fix it. The whole thing was that who is going to use it and how it is going to change the life of the user. I think those part of design thinking, persona-based way of doing things, which was there in the digital world, had never translated into the AI world. But it is beginning to happen now. And that's the other technological, I would say, advances happening. And the last one is, in my view, I'm open to hear multiple perspectives around it, is how do you take these things? These are very powerful, and sophisticated aspects that is, there to solve business problems and even citizen problems. So how do you take these things and embed it back into decision making where it matters the most? The world, I think, evolved around AI and machine learning and algorithms was, it's something outside, and you apply something there and then bring it back into your core business processes to do something about it, right? But there was always a arm's length of how this should happen. And obviously, we being engineers and marvelous engineers, we started fiddling around things and made it a big spaghetti type of a problem. And hence the last pointer I'm making is always about how do you embed the decision making back into the processes, the business systems and applications, and humanize it so people can use it, right? So these are the things where I see a lot of technological advances happening. Still a long way to go, but at least we are on the right track. If you
well said, well said. I can't agree more with you on this. These are like very relevant points. In fact, I mean, this is something very close to my heart also, and I would like to chip in a few thoughts here for all your thoughts. I mean, one thing which is happening is that there is tremendous advancements in the tools and the techniques that are used for, particularly when it comes to machine learning and deep learning. The techniques are amazing. See, one thing, the success always begets success, right? I mean, there is widespread adoption of deep learning and advanced machine learning, and hence more research is happening there, and more research is fueling wider adoption also. And today, people are not happy with a few models, like the traditional CNNs and the RNNs and the LSTMs don't excite people anymore. Newer technologies are born, newer methods of solving networks, neural networks are being born. And very importantly, what I see is that big adopters, what they do is they are now working on ensemble of models. They are no longer happy with one model or two model or whatever. They need many models to work together and provide the output, and then only they are able to get the output that they want. And typical use cases, or I would say the work streams where I have seen this getting adopted, are things like automotive, self-driving cars, healthcare, etc., which are very complex problems to solve. I mean, a self-driving car is such a complex problem to solve, and you need multiple models to work with one another. Advanced working like generative adversarial networks and reinforcement learnings, they talk to one another. An ensemble of models work together to fuel this technology. And very importantly, The cost of computation also is going down drastically because there is more adoption of that. And that is where parallel computing comes into play, which is spearheaded by NVIDIA, my employer. And you take a large problem, a very large problem, and break it down into a large number of small threads and run these threads in parallel. I mean, easier said than done. And there is so much of technological advancements happening in this area. And very importantly, software packages are being born for individualized verticals. There is a software package for medical imaging. There's another software package for conversational AI, things like that. So new techniques, newer technologies, newer tools, software tools are being born every day, and that's fueling the good growth that we are seeing in the industry. That is what I would say as what I see as advancement happening here. TV, what are your thoughts? What is that you see are the most interesting ones happening that has happened in the recent past? TV, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I want to bring some more perspective. I think Som gave a very, very good list of technical issues that are really there. And I think you brought some more perspectives in there. I want to bring some perspective from the business side also, because I'm also doing my PhD in how AI really adoption happens in the business context and how does it really drive beyond the technology. I'm putting a different lens to the whole thing, and here is my lens. So if you look at the history of AI in the last 60 years, we have seen twice a situation where AI was oversold. And once it was right after the neural networks were created back in late 50s. And 60s, and there was this whole thing when Marvin Minsky's book kind of killed the whole neural networks because it was a hype and it was an oversold promise. And then in 80s, we again saw that expert systems oversold the whole thing. In fact, I remember when I was in my master's, we were just coming out of that AI winter. I worked on fuzzy logic and we worked on neural networks and a bunch of other stuff late 80s. It was unknown actually. Nobody even used to talk about that. Now today I am seeing, at least my research is leading me to think on or pick up those weak signals. Some of them do point towards it. So we are very clearly seeing that this discussion is going in two extremes. One extreme is that people who are scared by the Hollywood movies of like HAL in the Space Odyssey or Terminator and the whole dystopian specter of AI, runaway and rogue AI. And then the people are saying, hey, let's kill the AI. On the other hand, there is this whole challenge of AI underperforming. Which is the similar kind of a context, because if you think at, for example, IBM Watson, or if you look at DeepMind and a bunch of other things, interesting and very impressive performance benchmarks, right? Whether it is playing chess or Go or other things. But if you think of how the business enablement has happened there, we still don't have a single business sustainable use case for any of these ones. Like if you see DeepMind started as a non-profit, and in 2019 they became for profit, and they are still searching for an elusive business model of how it will really work out. If you think of Watson, great, I think, and the reason why this becomes important is that it needs tremendous billion-dollar deep pockets to collect the kind of data. For GPT-3, for example, we are seeing billions of parameters that it is really looking at it, right? And then it is able to do. So only billion-dollar companies can do. And despite it, if they cannot build a business case out of it, then what is the future of that technology? Is it even, will it only continue to be an interesting toy which can play chess and never really give me the business benefits? Is that where we are destined to be? That is the question that I am grappling with. So I want to offer 2 or 3 data points to complement what Som said and what you said, Sundar. So one is, I think the time has come for us to start looking beyond big data. Some authors are talking about things like small data or thick data or human data. And I think that's really becoming an important thing, because if you think of the state of learning today, majority of the models are around supervised learning. We still haven't really started touching on unsupervised learning. The human beings don't simply learn in supervised learning. Nobody shows us a million photographs of cat versus dog before we can know what is cat, what is dog. right? You see 3 pictures and the child picks up. So how do we really do? And we may not come to a one-shot learning so easily, but we definitely have to step away from the current state of using big data as it stands today to a lot of things. So really start looking at it. So that's one perspective. The second perspective will be also in terms of the ethical uses or the debiasing, for example. And Som briefly talked about the explainable AI. I want to, so one is really the algorithmic part of it and being able to explain. And obviously, we know the deep learning has limitations on being able to explain what it means. But how do we go to the data itself, right? If my data itself has a problem, like I was reading this paper on Archive, a recent paper from 3 researchers from MIT, that ImageNet, which is like ImageNet is like it is the holiest shrine that we have for all the deep learning image recognition work. Very few people might know that there is a 3.5% bias or error, actually error in tagging itself in ImageNet. Now, if you are really building your algorithms that are using ImageNet as a training data, then you are already starting with a 3.5% bias and you don't even know that. So you are going to keep tuning your parameters and they are going to misbehave big time because they are simply not even connected to reality. And some of them are so, some very innocuous mistakes that should be obvious to a human operator, but they are simply there, right? So there are a lot of issues in debiasing the errors in the data set itself, which I think are important there. And also being able to self-report the bias. I think we have to grow our algorithms to the whole explainable AI. They are able to self-report the bias, for example, and so on there. And the last point I want to add is that currently a lot of work that we have done from an analytics point of view has been really in terms of being able to cull out the insights from the existing data. So if you look at what Daniel Pearl calls, right, he calls in the rung of the ladder of causation. As a Turing Award winner, he said whatever AI we are doing is really at the lowest form of evolution of AI, right? He himself is very uncharitable about the maturity and has no second qualms about saying that what we are doing is just a basic statistical correlation, nothing more than that. We have not even taken the first step towards the causality. And the whole causality part to me is really the most interesting one. Current big data and the technologies of machine learning is not simply ready to take us to the whole causal part of this thinking there. So unless we really are able to move out from a statistical inference learning to a causal learning, I don't think we will ever be able to really see the higher levels of really things there. So I think these are just 3 or 4 of those things that I wanted to add to the mix and make it more complex than it already is.
Sure, absolutely. So before I move on to Vineet for the next question, one request to all the audience who are gathered here is please do type in your questions. You could use either the Q&A window or the chat window, and we will take it up towards the end of the session. So, but don't hold on to it now. Whatever question you want to ask to any of the panelists, just type it in and we will answer them towards the end of the session. So Vineet, the AI and analytics space is obviously getting a lot of attention, and startups are mushrooming. Very well-established companies, traditional companies, are expanding their capabilities to this area. Everybody wants to get onto the bandwagon. So, what do you think? Is this a good sign, or is it something that people should be worried about? And the second part of my question to you is, either way, if it is a good sign or if it is something that one needs to be worried about, what is that your company does which makes you stand apart from the rest of the world?
So I think it's a very good question, Sundar. And I think if you look at the entire AI landscape, I think there are 3 or 4 different segments of companies. I think there's a segment of companies which is focused on using AI to solve to build business applications in various domains. So, for instance, there are companies who use AI to solve use cases in the agriculture industry. For instance, predicting diseases ahead of time, and of course optimizing irrigation and whatnot, right? And there are and then there could be companies in the let's say there are companies in the automotive autonomous car space. There are companies who are in the energy space. There are companies who are in the surveillance space. So there are a lot of companies which are focused on building business applications, and they are using AI. Secondly, we also have companies who are what we call as AI or tech enablers. NVIDIA is a prime example of an AI enabler company, and they are heavily into computing for accelerating deep learning pipelines. Similarly, there are a lot of other AI and technology enabler companies like Microsoft, for instance, or Google, for instance, because they are investing heavily on AI and technology R&D space, and they also have products and solutions to that lets developers build and deploy machine learning models faster. There are also a lot of companies that are coming in this segment, which let's say focus on very individual tasks in the ML pipeline. For example, there are companies who have products for just annotation, and annotation itself is $1 billion worth of market. There are companies who are in the ML ops space. There are companies who are in the enterprise feature store space. So there are a lot of companies within this segment, which is the AI enablement segment. And I think the third segment is, pure play AI services companies like Afine or Tredence or Musing, right? Which use analytics and AI and technology to build end-to-end solutions for enterprise customers. So I do think that there is enough, space in the AI industry, given there are so many segments and there are so many sub-segments within each of these segments. But I think what matters probably at the end of the day are probably two things: whether the solution that these segments are building, for instance, whether it's an end business application or it's a product that enables AI, or if it is companies like us, whether we have the right set of capability, and secondly, if we are able to create value for the end consumer. In our case, it's our enterprise customer, and we are heavily focused on using capability, whether it's AI capability or data engineering capability or domain expertise, to build highly relevant, scalable, and practical solutions for our client, because only then they will be able to realize benefits out of it. So I think as long as they have the right set of capability and they can create a measurable and a long-lasting impact for the end consumer, I think there is definitely a lot of place for such players in the AI domain.
Nice. Got it. Okay. Smita, I mean, your area of work is a very sensitive area, right? I mean, I would think, I myself would think 10 times before I expose my bank account to a company. Security is important for everyone. I mean, be it an individual or a big company. But I would say that the space in which you are playing, security is at most important, and not only from a conformance standpoint, but also to convince your customers, hey, I'm a secure company and you can believe in me.
Yep.
Purely from a security perspective, what are all the measures that your lead has taken, and how do you adopt the recent changes in technology to ensure that, number one, you are convinced that you are secure, number one, that is number one, and how do you ensure that you pass on the message to your customers that, hey, it's okay to believe in me?
Sure. I think we have one advantage that we've had is because our longevity in this space is high, right? For a fintech to be around in this kind of sensitive space for 20 years has given us some amount of, I would say, trust that's inbuilt in the market. But that said, what we do quite a bit and quite well is make sure that we are subject to every possible audit on it. I think you cannot take away what an external party can do, right? So there is obvious compliance. We have heavy focus in terms of process, technology, encryption, decryption, all of those standards which are there, which are absolutely cutting edge to make sure that we cannot one loss and we are out of business. I mean, that's pretty much what we say and we live by. We always talk about our data promise that's usually published in big bold letters on our website, which says, you know what, all said and done, this is your data, customers' data. If we have to use it, it has to be de-identified. It has to be, there's no way that you suddenly start receiving spam mails and somebody relates it back to a leak here. That cannot happen in our kind of an ecosystem. So first off, right from acquisition to storage to exposing that data, at every layer we have security standards. As I said, we go through 150 plus audits because our customers want to audit us. Compliance wants to audit us. We want to audit ourselves. So I think at any point of time, there's some audit or the other going on all the time. That's one. But I think the bigger and the more interesting facet that we've done over the last 3 years or 4 years at least is privacy becoming what it is, we do get access, even if I mask your name, your social security number, your identifier, everything at acquisition source, I get access to certain row level data that I can still infer your details from, right? So what do? I basically have to therefore come up with, so what we've done is actually created a fairly sophisticated machine learning algorithm, which masks all signs of private information from every description node. So we strip everything. So even as an analyst, my analysts, if I have to get access to complete raw data, I have to jump through hoops, fall at people's feet, and then possibly pledge my firstborn. I still won't get it. That's a different issue, but I have to try all of that. And at the end of the day, we still try and work with as much masked data as possible. And that masking, which is an in-house solution, is completely ML driven. At one point, we said we did brute force. Patterns change like this. Like I acquire a new source of data. That data has the seen unseen pattern. Thing is, it doesn't work so easily. So we've had to keep evolving our sophistication in the way we actually mask. So that actually has led us to always keep an eye open to saying, what can I do that actually, where do I embed AI even here? Right? So actually we've started looking at, and we've successfully embedded now. In fact, every transaction that we have host is actually completely masked. Only the very minimal data that will not compromise the user's identity that is actually made available to us. Some banks actually tell us, because you get the data and you give it back to me, when you give it back to me, mask it and give it back to me. Because I am as paranoid, if not more paranoid than you are. So even though it's my data I'm giving to you, I still want to send it back masked to the customer, because the customer may leave his mobile lying around. So let them just see a series of X's for certain sensitive data, right? So all of that is now taken care of. So I think it's still going to be a challenge, because see, at the end of the day, there's always going to be that 0.0001% that,
yeah, I know.
I think that's, if you're getting 99.9999% in, we're still happy right now. And we do get a price. We have an audit firm that we actually specifically analyze for leakage. And they've pretty much certified that the solution that we built doesn't exist in the market as is. And we don't sell it. I mean, it's an internal use case at this point of time. So there is, I think as I said, necessity being the mother of invention has worked out very well for us in this case.
Very nice, very nice. And is there something that your company does specifically that makes you stand out of the others? I mean, in terms of technology adoption, I mean.
I think one of the major things that we've done is tried, and just give me 1 second, I seem to be out of juice and I don't want to get cut right in the middle of a sentence. So I'm just hooking my charger. Yeah. So I think one of the major things that we did early on was the fact that we not only used technology, as I said, to gather and store data. We started our first, I would say, AI embedded solutions went live about 4 or 5 years ago. And from then it's only improved, right? I mean, in our entire computing space of enrichment / aggregation / wellness providers, you will find people who provide maybe, 1 X percentage of what we provide and Y percentage of something else. But I think what we've effectively done is actually the AI embedding in what we've done is probably what sets us apart. So we have the capability today to identify about 5 million different merchants. Like you can swipe your card in some random gas station in Topeka somewhere, right? I mean, or XYZ county in some part of the US. We're able to do.
Is it right if I summarize it as like a widespread use of the modern AI and machine learning techniques to pick out the commonalities and the patterns and the data and ensure that is used to serve your customers? Is that a good summary?
I would say yes, but I would also say the reason we succeeded was we knew we had a problem to solve. We knew what problem we needed to solve, and we were able to work backwards. A lot of times, people actually get into this mode of experimentation without knowing what they need to solve for. I think we have the advantage of knowing this is what I need to do. I can get 100 people to sit and tag transactions or annotate transactions. That's not going to be efficient. Right. So I think that's where we got in early in the game. People are doing it now as a service separately. There are small startups doing the same thing, but I think we got in 5 years before most of them did.
Excellent. Nice. So as you rightly pointed out, I mean, technology does not have any sense unless it is adopted by the businesses, right? I mean, one can feel very happy about the things happening in the data center, in the research institutions, in the big research labs, etc., but it all that becomes meaningless until and unless it is adopted by businesses and deployed, right? So, I mean, being one of the leading AI service providers for the world, where do you think this technology is going to be adopted much faster in the years to come? I mean, which domain seems very exciting, seems very promising? What do you think?
Um,
Uh,
I, I, I mean, if it was specifically directed to somebody, or shall I just throw in my?
As I mean, I asked Som to respond, but I mean,
My
if you
bad, my bad.
if
I'm
you
sorry. So go ahead. I'll add my 2 cents if you
sure,
miss what I
please,
want to say.
sure, Som, go ahead, yeah.
okay. Sundar, the question you asked and the starting point was very interesting for me, and then I was kind of grinning from year to year, right? Which is lot many AI and ML in development or in pilot. Very few actually get into production, right? Very few actually are deployed at scale to handle that kind of a real world challenges, and hence the outcome orientation of it, and hence the implications and impact that makes around. So with that kind of a premise, when we looked at across our client portfolio and the kind of problems that we are solving, we also realized that in today's world, when data scientists and ML engineers and data engineers and everybody, including the powerful platforms that we enable them to do their development work with, they're focused on the problem solving. And Smita rightly pointed out that if you don't have the problem, then you're not going anywhere else. But these guys are focused on the problem solving and in a very controlled environment with a certain kind of data set, with a certain kind of measurements that they need to follow through, and hence they can say, hey, I found a solution. So their metrics, their focus is about precision and accuracy. If you take these two kind of leading measurement criteria, but they are never, ever, rarely I have seen focused on scale and performance. So when we look at these two, and these two problems emerge when these things come out of the labs and the pilot environments and now ready to be deployed into production. And production is a whole new world. Yeah, there to TV's point, the data itself is uncontrolled. You can't just even pinpoint what kind of data I'm dealing with. The kind of and the number of algorithms that you want to apply to solve a very complex end-to-end business problem. And each one of them need to talk to each other, pass on information between them, because that is how the business applications are built to solve those kind of problems. So the scale and performance comes very late in the game. In our company, we started on this thinking in the Innovation Council. That's what I lead. We created a product called ML Walks. And what it does is it looks into the concept drift, the data drift itself. It goes back to the data pipeline. It looks into the feature sets and the repositories of that which model, which version, what kind of features you use, what kind of a upper bound, lower bound set of expectations it is giving you, and how did you package it, which versions of algorithms you packaged it, how many algorithms you have put in, all that gamut of things. And it tracks it real time in production with a feedback loop, which is why I call it humanizing AI, back to the business owner that, hey, this is where your things are beginning to drift around, right? Now, and this kind of thing was not there earlier. So something happens in production, what do? You actually call back the data scientist who developed it. That I don't understand what you have put in here, now open the hood and start fixing it, yeah? And the data scientists are, as you know, very exotic guys, right? They hate to come into a production scenario and start opening the hood and fixing it. They have moved on to solving another interesting problem. Yeah. So this problem we are trying to solve, and what we see is places where legacy-oriented algorithms, models, and data pipelines have been built. Healthcare, insurance, BFS, telecom. These are prime for this kind of a disruption. Retail and CPG, where you find lot many connected things to come together to solve a business problem. It is never unidimensional. That's the complexity one needs to look into. The other part of the world that is now waking up is manufacturing and industrials, which has been lagging for a long, long time. You won't even imagine there are systems and which are islands. They don't even talk to anybody. So if you want to get some information from there, you have to actually go and do a extract out of that and then bring it back and then massage and interpret that to make some meaning out of it. And they're never,
not to forget smart factories, not only connected factories, but also monitored smart factories where
exactly.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
And in that part of the world, the operating technologies, which is the shop floor, the machines, the processes, and the IT applications, which is planning, budgeting, forecasting, production scheduling, a lot of logistics and supply chain, they're never connected. So that is the other set of industries, which is very, very ripe for disruption, and they are waking up now. Of course, with IoT kind of sensorizations and then data pipelines and all, it is emerging as the next biggest hotspot. But again, to Vinit's point, the use cases are emerging. The use cases are not probably completely defined with the kind of outcomes you want to look for, and experimentation at a large stake in those areas. But that's the overall industry perspective that I would like to bring in.
And if I may add just one more point
to
the landscape of machine learning and AI training, I think all of us have witnessed that pandemic has made our world and businesses a lot more dynamic, and we want our businesses to respond to business shocks, whether they're external or internal, in a very agile and fast way. So if you look at a traditional ML training process, I think roughly 70 to 80% of model development time goes into what we call as it's grunt work, because it involves pulling data from various different sources. It involves cleansing data. It involves building features. It involves what we call as the analytical data set, doing a lot of QAs, right? So 70 to 80% of the time goes into this grunt work, which is also very error prone, right? So, but right now we are in a situation where we don't have time to experiment. We want to do multiple experiments, but we don't have the time to do that, right? So I think need of the hour right now is AI-ready data foundations more than even the best AI and machine learning techniques, because we want to build, experiment, and deploy, retrain, and deploy models faster. And hence, what does AI-ready data foundations like feature stores? I know feature store is a very important concept that was popularized by, I think, Uber 2-3 years ago. But I think a lot of tech companies and a lot of pure play AI services companies are implementing feature stores for their end clients. Now, what feature stores are, this essentially is a comprehensive analytical data mart at the end of the day, right? And it has a lot of collective intelligence that has gone into it. It can have about 100 to 200 different features, which are sourced from various different data sets. There's a lot of QA done already, so you don't have to mess your hands with data cleansing and doing areas and whatnot. And this acts as a single source of truth for both your ML training and ML inferencing or production, right? And hence, this accelerates the experimentation as well as training and deployment of models faster, which is what the need of the hour is today. So I just wanted to bring this point also to the table, because I think we need to look beyond AI also and correct our data foundations and create AI-ready data foundations.
Excellent points. I would like to add something here. One thing which I see is coming up in a big way and which actually needs a lot of improvement is the MLOps. We call it as MLOps, the machine learning operations part of it. I mean, you could do fantastic trainings and you could do experimentation with the deployment with inferencing. But then that has to be a very, very seamless platform, a seamless system that hosts a very flexible infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, I certainly mean both hardware and the very sophisticated software that wraps around the hardware. A very sophisticated suite of software, layers of software. So you need a very elegant and an advanced platform that is able to serve so many use cases, so many complexities, so many models as microservices to each of the use cases. Once again, if I borrow the example of Walmart, because we have a person from Walmart in this panel, look at the number of use cases that they need to solve. Look at the millions of SKUs that they need to deal with every day. If they have to do a price optimization, if they have to do an inventory management, if they want to do a customer behavior analytics through smart cameras that are fitted inside the store, if they are going to predict which shelf is going to get the maximum attention of eyeballs, if they're going to predict, I'm not talking about analyze, they're going to predict which of these components are going to get into the shopping cart, but may not be billed at the point of sales. I mean, there is like so many use cases, so many problems to be solved simultaneously. So what
No,
do you
absolutely, Sundar. And just to add to
Yes.
that, like
Yeah.
for example, we have tried in our stores the robotic solutions, the Bossa Nova robots, for example, that you might have seen. I've seen a demo of that in one of the store, for example, which is actually a robotic. So think of it like a robotic scanner arm mounted on the top of a Roomba, and which is just going in the aisles and collecting the data on which shelf has to be reshelved, for example. Or if you look at the Store 8, which we have, and Store 8 actually, Mr. Sam Walton had historically, the Store 8 was something that he used to experiment. So that's kind of an experimental setup. It's a real store, it's a neighborhood market format where they do a lot of experiments. So they have like a lot of cameras where they are constantly scanning. I believe they get like a terabyte of information in just one neighborhood store format per second. So you can imagine the amount of data that's coming there. And the whole idea there is that purposefully stay away, obviously, from the surveillance side effects of that, but really look at the shelves and see, hey, maybe there is an item that is out there, and how can we really do the fast filling of that, or how can we really basically improve the response time so that the associates are spending less time in kind of checking what to do and actually spending more time with the shoppers, for example. So these are experimental, a lot of interesting perspectives, and we still have to obviously see which of them work there. In a lot of sense, in digital, it's easier, right? Because we are able to actually see some of the things in digital, and we are able to do. Now we are trying to bring some of the online to offline ways of doing and some of the offline behaviors into online. So I think the data obviously has to go there, and I agree with Vineet's point of view there, that a lot of time is going into really making sure how can we have the AI ready data, so to say, so that we can consume it. Because we are talking, like in this particular example, we are talking terabytes of data coming in a real time. You don't have you have to operate in a low latency mode, and you have to give, let's say we are out of bread in some area there, and you are getting the message. You have to immediately process that, be able to really filter out the signal from the noise, and tell the associate that, hey, can you please go to the back and get those the loaves of bread there. It sounds like a simple operation, but how do we do that in the real time there? And we are doing it like 1,000 of times in the store for thousands of SKUs. So that's a complexity we have.
Well said, well said, well said. So basically, I mean, going back to what I was telling, basically you need a very elastic infrastructure which is able to serve all these use cases as microservices in a seamless way. There is no way somebody is going to swipe their credit card and then wait for the response to happen, right? There is no way an incident has happened already, but the camera captures it and lets you know that it has happened like 3 minutes later. It has to happen real time, almost real time. Real time is a misnomer, almost real time. So that's a very, very interesting field which is gaining a lot of attention these days. And I'm sure the advent of 5G is going to change the world in a big way. I mean, 5G is really, really going to change. Things which we have not even imagined that it would change. From retail to healthcare, to how surgeries are going to happen, to how conversational AI is going to happen. I mean, conversational AI, we all know that it is just not person answering. It's just not asking somebody, hey, what's your name? And the person responding, my name is John or Julie. That's not conversational AI. I mean, conversational AI is humanized, very contextualized conversation, which follows the semantics and the syntax of human language. It is very contextualized, and it has to be multimodal. That's very important. What I mean by multimodal is that, say, for example, if I walk into a store and I point my fingers to an object and ask, hey, what is the price of that object? This involves all the three levels of deep learning, all the three applications of deep learning. Computer vision, because the camera needs to identify which object my finger is pointed towards. NLP, because my question has to be understood, and of course, speech is there. And so, how do I fuse all the three models, three modes of AI? Multimodal AI and run an ensemble of models and give a response so that the person who is receiving the response does not even understand whether the agent who is responding to him is a human being or a machine. That is where conversational AI comes into play. And Tathagat, you mentioned about GPT-3. That's a big thing. The transformers are transforming the world of NLP, as we know. But the complexity there is very deep models, ensemble of models, and enormity of data. So that is the most important problem, which I feel that needs to be solved. And a lot of work is happening in that area. And in my viewpoint, this is going to be a big thing tomorrow. And a lot of research is happening in this area. A lot of adoption has started to happen. I will not say that it has happened, but I would safely say that it has started to happen. And these are green fields which I feel will come up in a big way. And that's my viewpoint also, to add to all your comments. And I know that Smita wanted to add something to this. Smita, go ahead. Yeah.
I think when you talked about the industry adoption and which are the ones that we see a lot that will happen. Again, not coming from a fintech or my actual background, but the one that I think we all underestimate is actually the government and the governance sector. That's the place actually where there is concern as well as a lot of action that's happening under the scenes. So, if you see all of the, your docu-series around ethical AI, use of AI, all of them are actually talking about surveillance. A lot of it is around surveillance, and surveillance effectively is being powered in the background with a lot of AI, right? So I think that's one part of that technology is allowing the fact that you can do mass surveillance, you're able to manage so much of governance problems that you could not manage in the past, right? So I think that's one of the biggest application areas for sure, especially in India as smart cities come up, and that's going to generate volumes and volumes of data. And that basically means you need to have the technology techniques to actually make sense of that as well and take actions on top of that insight that you get. The other one that I think technology has enabled is cross-industry use of data. One of the things that I read, which is very, very interesting, was in the financial space, there was a written use case about how image recognition or aerial surveys of the Tesla warehouse was actually used to short Tesla stock, because somebody was actually subscribing to the satellite imagery above the Tesla office, and they realized that as of the day of the planned release of an XYZ model, the warehouse stock wasn't going up. Right? You think of the cross utilization of that data. This is actually satellite data being taken for some other purpose altogether, finding its way into an investment decision. Right? So, right. And those are areas or spenders with deep pockets. So they will actually be able to buy and leverage data across industries. I think that's one thing, is portability of data is now increased, which was not the case earlier. Right? I think, and that also means you're able to now link satellite data with shipment data that you're getting from somewhere else, and you're able to now start looking at things at a scale hitherto never imagined. And this is where I think not having a use case helps. You're literally looking at disparate sources of data and saying, let me see what I can link and see what kind of a conclusion I can come up with. So there is space, I think, for both, right? You go towards a use case driven thing, but that's where innovation comes in, right? I'm actually doing stuff, looking at grounds up data to see what can happen. And I think none of that is possible without the ability to handle data at scale, analysis at scale, models at scale. I think that's something that...
Well said. Well said. Well said. So everything boils down to adoption at scale. That is when the technology is going to be successful. It is not experimentation. It is not POCs. It is not one or two examples that get solved. It is how do I adopt it at scale for solving my business and making my business better. I think that is where it boils down to, if I listen to all four of you explaining how it is progressing. All right. So I think we have, once again, a reminder to the audience, please do type in your questions. We'll be very happy to take up your questions in a few minutes time from now. I would request, since we don't have much time, I would request brief answers from all of you for the next couple of questions. There is a belief that data is data. Data is data, right? Whether you pick it up from a sensor or whether you pick it up from a heartbeat or whether you pick it up from a camera, data is data, and who cares which domain it comes from? That's a belief. Do you really, what's your take on it? I don't want to lead you into the answer, but what is your take on it? Is domain expertise really a need, or the need for domain expertise is slowly fading away because of the advancements in technology that enable you to look at data from a different lens?
Well, I have a twofold answer, and I will be brief, like you suggested. One part of it, or one kind of camp, looks into the context behind the data. The data itself doesn't mean anything, and hence the context behind the data is extremely important. And the context comes from the process alignments or the process chain it has come through. Or in a certain case, it is the industry or the vertical domain context around where you fit it in. Without that, yes, you will draw a lot of inferences, a lot of hypotheses you can prove, disprove, but end of the day, it may or may not even make a business sense of what does this really mean and why it is saying something what it is saying. So one camp is very, very vocal about it. The other camp, what Smita just said, that in some use cases, actually there is no use case itself. You're just looking at different kinds of multiple types of data sets. They may not come together. They don't have the affinity for each other. But when you put them together and look at it at a different lens, you start emerging certain newer patterns, newer discoveries that you can then distill around to find the real value purpose of it. That's where the context you will come to may not be at the beginning, but you will start asking the context behind those data sets as they came together at a later stage. In the initial phase, probably you are just doing multiple correlations at scale, right? Millions of correlations at scale. And later on, when you have filtered down through those correlations to maybe a few, that is when you really start asking, what's the context behind this data? What is it telling me, right? Till that point, you're probably not. So eventually, in both the cases, they will come to the context behind the data, but one starts with the context behind the data. That's the key point of analysis, and the other probably looks for the context behind the data at a later phase. But without the domain context behind the data, it is extremely difficult even to make some sense out of it.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. Yes.
No, I think I completely agree with Sean. I think all of us in this forum are in the business of business problem solving, right? And analytics and data, although analytics and AI are very powerful tools, but at the end of the day, they are just tools to get to the final business solution, right? I think in my 15 years of analytics and AI career, not once I've come across a client who has given me a very well-defined machine learning problem or a very well-defined analytical data set. It has never happened once, right? So what we usually start with is with a business problem, sometimes a very loosely defined business problem. And we use our domain expertise, we use general problem solving skills, and of course the backing of data and AI to build relevant, scalable, and high performance solutions for our client. So I do think domain understanding and I think general problem solving skills are equally important. And I do think there are certain domains like manufacturing, BFSI, healthcare for that matter, which are not just very knowledge intensive, but there are a lot of other elements like compliance, governance, and even process and engineering related issues. So I think in these kind of domains, having a full understanding of domain is very important before you even attempt to solve any problem. So yeah, I think domain understanding is very important if you want to make any benefit out of data or AI for that matter.
Excellent. Excellent. Right. So I see a couple of questions from the audience. I think it's time now to take questions from the audience. Here's one interesting question. In which segment of AI is India leading its research and expertise? Talking specifically about India. And is there any major inward-looking problem? When you say inward-looking problem, our own country-looking problem that is being considered for AI to be used to address that. I mean, who wants to answer that? I'm not going to ask a specific person, or somebody who thinks that he or she knows about this, how India problems are solved. Pick it up and answer.
In my past life, I used to do a lot of client work in the domestic sector, which is India, government and public and private as well. And what I see is we are doing some tremendous and sophisticated amount of work in agriculture sector. This is about using even technologies like topology reading and lidars and applying that to coffee beans and saying that for the farmer actually at that level even what grade of coffee is this, and hence what kind of a price you can demand for, cutting down the middleman, right?
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but are these deployed in India? I know there are startups who create these solutions in India, and it's widely deployed in the US and Europe. That I know. But are they deployed
that is
in
happening
India?
in India. That is happening in India.
That's nice.
Yeah?
Nice to hear that. Okay.
Yeah. So it has gone to that level. Yeah. Is it widespread? No. But is it beginning to happen? Yes. I was fortunate enough to be part of a government directive around building world's largest citizen data lake, which is all about people and of course it has related to the taxations and India as a country, you can see only 3% pay tax, right? With that kind of a population. So if you have to know who is paying tax, who is not paying tax, and then different kinds of sources of data you need to bring in, not just about your TDS data, right, which is tax deducted at source. And if you have to build that kind of a capability, not only on data, authenticity of it, because whatever inference you draw from there is a whole lot of legal counseling against it. Right. And so you have to be really, really pinpoint. See, amount of sophisticated algorithms somebody has to put in, and geospatial analysis around it, the neighborhood patterns and every single thing. That is happening in India. On the digital enabling side of it, purely looking at from your mining belt to the ports, where you start loading things, and then how that entire value chain is getting digitized. You have always heard about it and spoken about it in the global countries, developed countries context, but in India itself, it is happening. So how do you reduce wastage? How do you look into the environmental compliance aspects of it? Again, it's not only digital, it is data, it is like you were pointing out earlier, a lot of image processing, video surveillance data, drones being used to collect data because these are at remote places, and assimilating all of that and channeling through various decision-making and compliance aspects. The last example I will give, which is not that heard of, is the world's tallest statue. That was built using a lot of sophisticated AI technologies and algorithms. Which part of the chip that goes in, and then how does it get slotted there, and then how would you recognize which one should go where? It's a huge jigsaw puzzle. And all of that with the time frame, and these are very sophisticated panels that was manufactured externally. I will not name the country, but it was externally manufactured and imported. So if there is a slight misalignment or a force fitting somewhere, you will see that it is getting rejected, and hence you have to wait for this spare thing to come in.
Sure.
So the point of is that a lot of data, a lot of process alignment, algorithms, visual techniques there, and all of that within a time bound to get it done. And India is
Excellent.
doing it at scale.
Oh, yes. I would like to add that the National Supercomputing Mission is having a very, very good long-term vision of how India is going to adopt AI, and agencies like CDAC, National Informatics Center, NIC, etc. They are all having a very, very good vision of how AI is going to shape up India. And I am very personally, I'm very, very optimistic about how India is going to adopt AI in the near future. Right. DV, this is for you. You talked about bias in data, small data, and big data, etc. And we are also moving towards applying AI techniques to data, either to synthesize data or to clean data. So is this a big challenge, or is it a big opportunity in applying AI to available data sets, and also to enable data to create business models? Where do you think this is going to move towards? Yeah.
Sure. So I think, I mean, let me quote a perspective here, and I just want to question our mental models. I think Vineet spoke about the different players in AI, like tech enablers and AI companies or pure play AI. I want to offer one perspective to all of you for consideration, which is like, and this was a data point of 1 year back or 1.5 years back. I think one of the VC firms in London did that, and they found out of 2,800 so-called AI companies in Europe, 40% actually were not AI. They were not even using machine learning. They were using human labor. And they probably, I'm surmising here that maybe they were doing tagging or other kind of things there. The only reason one can say is they were using AI for so-called labeling was basically it raises your funding prospect by 15%. Now, think of it that way, Sundar. We are seeing a situation where people don't even understand what is AI. We are indiscriminately using the term there, whether there is machine learning or not there. So the point here is that, first of all, I think we need to take a step back and say, and recognize that not everything requires AI. Not everything has to be solved using AI. There are some things that are better served. If you need a finite state machine, you might as well use the deterministic logic, and you really build a strong software program and just solve the problem.
Yes. Well said.
Sorry, problem there. Yeah. Second is, yes, there might be opportunities where we have to synthesize or clean the data where we can do there. But I think, like we also heard, for example, in terms of Smita's perspective on like how they were using their own scanner in terms of the whole data was changing all the time there. So obviously deterministic methods may not be enough to do that, and you have to have an evolving, and there the machine learning part becomes important, because if you are not really using machine learning, you are actually using just a decision tree, just to kind of a static tree without any feedback. You will end up thinking today that it is a clean data, but because of the drift that Som also talked about, after 6 months, you will have a totally wrong classification happening there. So I'm in principle not opposed to the whole idea, but with the caveats that you have to have, you cannot just pick it out and say, okay, I'm using machine learning or I'm using some way of really cleaning up the data without putting it into some kind of a dynamic system there. It has to be a dynamic system, otherwise it's of no use.
Excellent. Excellent. So this is my last question, and the only question which I'm going to go round robin to all four of you. And I'm going to give you exactly the 25 seconds to each one of you, not beyond that, and then we'll wrap up. And the very important question is, what is your suggestion or what is your advice to the young India? What do you want them to do in terms of, let's say, study or practice or internship, or you can pick up anything? Where do you think that they should focus their energies towards, so that, number one, they become successful, they make their country successful, and they make their employees successful? I mean, I leave it to you to pick up the order of how you want to answer it, who wants to go first, but 25 seconds to each one of you, please.
I can go first. And so my view would be that luckily we live in a country where we have tons of problems. Go and find the one outside your home and solve it. Don't worry about theoretical things. have an outside-in perspective, solve a real-world problem, and then go inside out and say what all I need to learn in order to solve the problem. Don't worry if it is not the latest neural network algorithm, but just solve the problem that makes a difference to people, and you will automatically find a way to learn that.
Fantastic.
I think I fully agree with TV here. I think I have only 3 suggestions for the burgeoning AI student community. Number one, I think given the AI and technology landscape is changing pretty much at a very rapid pace, and by the time you graduate, it would have changed drastically. Just focus on one fundamental programming paradigm, which could be Python, which could be C++, which could be Java, right? All you need to have is a really good fundamentals towards coding. Secondly, again, you don't have to learn each and every machine learning or deep learning technique. I think as long as you understand the fundamentals of deep learning and machine learning, and probably understand one good architecture very, very well, that should do. But thirdly, and most importantly, I think you need to solve a problem in its entirety and not just focus on programming or machine learning. I think it is better if you solve an entire end-to-end business problem in a business setting. So hence, I think taking up internships, taking up certifications or trainings which give you that business exposure, or working for multidisciplinary programs in your colleges, I think should give you that perspective, and that's very important to make you corporate ready data scientists.
Excellent.
Yeah, so my thought process specific to building a career in AI would be that be aware that there are typically 3 pillars that any AI solution needs to have. One is on the engineering side, one is on the data science side, and one is on analyst kind of a track, analytics or business analytics kind of a track. I would strongly recommend that you pick your specialization, but be very aware of what the other 2 are. Because if you work as a silo saying, I'm a data scientist, but this is where my job ends, and that's the engineering guy's job, and that's the analyst's job, you're never going to grow beyond being what you are. You're always going to be a data cruncher if you're a business analyst. You're always going to be an engineer if you're an engineer. You're always going to be this low-level data scientist or a modeler if you're that. So I think it's important to respect and be curious about the triage of all the trio of functions that make any solution successful, but be strong in one, but know how it works with the other 2. That's very important.
Excellent. So
very nice. What is left for me, I think all of this is very, very important. What is left for me is again 3 things. One is we don't ask why. I don't know why we are not asking why. I think you need to repeatedly ask, why is this a problem? Mr. Client or whoever it is bringing that problem to you. The more why you ask to that problem, the better clarity you will get, and hence you can think about a solution from there. The second advice I will have is it is not about algorithm, and it is not about the programming, which is where the magic happens. Magic happens when it has got an outcome, it has got an impact, and you have to hence understand and go deeper into asking who is going to use it, and where this decision making is going to happen, right? It's extremely important. And the last one is a holistic lens you need to apply. Many times the solution could be some business process tweaking itself. You don't even need to do a whole lot of things. And many times the problem could be at the other extreme, that completely change the way your business processes and functions have been working, because this is not what the end consumer is expecting to happen. So jumping in, running into the problem solving, saying, I know 5 algorithms and I have got access to this powerful Azure or AWS or a GCP platform, and just give me data, I'm going to do the magic. That if you are in that mindset, that is completely wrong mindset.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. All right. I think we are on top of the hour, and so we need Smita and TV. Honestly, this is one of the best panels that I have ever attended, and the most insightful one that I have attended. And it was a pleasure and a privilege, more importantly, a privilege to listen to all 4 of you, to get to know your varied views And I hope that the audience also enjoyed it. All of you stay safe, stay sheltered at home, and have a good evening, have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Sundar. Thanks for a lovely panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.